Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, oh my gosh, we are talking to another person in Italy. I think this is just fate. I need to go to Italy. I need to do live broadcasts. I said that last month when we had a bunch of Irish folks. It's very bizarre, but we're going to have so much fun today. Normally, we frequently talk about hardcore business things, websites, legal aspects, all of those. But again, this time we're going to be talking about mental and things that, I always say, if you're not right in your heart, your body, and your head, doesn't matter what you do with your business. So, we're going to be speaking with someone today about this topic, and we're going to have so much fun. So please join me in welcoming Anthony Donatoccio. I almost forgot that last part, to our program today. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Deb. Great to be here.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Anthony Donatoccio is in the business of amplifying the well-being of others. After having personally experienced burnout and the health-related issues that came with it in 2015, he and his wife made the decision to try something different. Within a month, they had packed up their lives and took off overseas to Europe with only the first 6 months somewhat planned. Nearly 6 years later, and having visited over 40 countries, he has a very different outlook on life and shares this real-life experience with others to make an impact on people. Now, as a Clarity Facilitator and Mentor, he loves helping overwhelmed, stressed out, and anxious introverts to really slow down so that they can begin seeing more and begin navigating their life in a way that feels much easier and effortless on a day-to-day basis. And I tell you what, as one of the overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious extroverts, I know I'm going to learn from this program today too. So welcome, Anthony. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Deb.
Great. Well, I always like knowing a little bit more about my guests. And, for people who are watching or listening, they can tell that you sound Australian, but then we talked about the fact that you're in Italy. So tell us a little bit more about this journey that you have been on.
Absolutely. So yes, I was born in Brisbane, Australia, and spent most of my life there. I really only dipped my foot in the travel side of things in high school. I was playing soccer or football, as we call it here in Europe. And that really showed me something back then. That was, again, in high school, so around that 16, 17 years of age. And it's kind of carried through my life since then, always having some form of travel involved in my working life, whether it would be 3 or 4 weeks each year. Because in Australia, we have to get a 4-week annual leave window, which is fantastic to actually see places that aren't that rushed as well. And I guess the thing that really started to speak to me as I traveled more and more was, this is again before even my real corporate career started to expand, because I have worked in a number of industries. So from supermarket retail to Borders bookstores when they were around back in the day.
Right. Bookstore? What's a bookstore?
Well, that was a fantastic opportunity there for actually to be able to work overseas, because I used to be involved in the actual setup of that. So that exposed me to different cultures as well. And I really loved that element and imparting the training and development to the people. And that's, again, going back to my early 20s, being involved at that at an operational level. So that, plus the personal development side of things that I was always very curious about, especially when I was working in the bookstore, because there's always be some new title coming out and that type of thing. So at the forefront, always wanting to be curious and kind of let that kind of lead the way, whatever I did. And that led me, to then go and explore from the retail to then in finance, where I spent most of my later part of my working life back in Australia. So in finance and private wealth in that arena. As wonderful as it was, though, during that entire time, there was something that while I was learning, and that's very much in my values, that continual learning and just for the fun of it, there was something that was always kind of tugging at me, like trying, and I never knew what it really was. And I was always, I guess, caught up in the way I thought I had to be in the world.
Right.
And while from an operational standpoint, again, the leadership element of it was fantastic. I loved my people. I supported them and that type of thing. And that came very natural. But for me, it was like, there's something beyond this office type of environment, and what essentially happened was this is going back to the lead up to 2015, working stupid hours, not listening to my body, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, all this stuff. My body was like nudging me, saying,
excuse me.
what, and I'm going, nah, okay, the whole grind, that era of grinding away, and I was just ignoring it. And then my body just went boom. And I literally came home one day to my wife, an absolute mess, and just saying, I'm either going to die before 40 or have a stroke or something like this. I literally cannot do this anymore. And it just happened to be actually around the same time that a travel expo was on that in our city that weekend. So we thought, okay, like I said before, we love our traveling and everything. We'd go along to see what happens. And we walked out of the event with a flight booked and a cruise booked. For a month later. So that next Monday, I literally resigned, gave the month's notice. We thrown everything into storage and we took off, and we actually based ourselves in Malta for that first 6 months. Now, for me, and this will tie into a lot of these life experiences which I've embodied during this time, which I now impart the way I see things differently as well. But that first 6 months for me, being based in Malta, helped me to slow down so much.
Okay.
And from that slowing down, because we were in a beautiful location too. It was like on the waterfront, the Mediterranean. It was beautiful. I sometimes call it my brain detox as well. It was my time I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I really didn't care. I just wanted to be.
Right.
And however that showed up, and like curiosity, create an exploration of whatever, I didn't care. But I know at that period of time, I was actually listening to me. And letting that kind of just guide me into wherever it wanted to go. And that was really that stepping stone, which over this last 5 to 6 years now has very much been incorporated into everything I do in life. It's that slowing down. When I don't know, it's okay that I don't know, because when I know, I'll know. And it took me a while to try and really get that. And that's where the travel that I incorporated when we were in Malta and then in other cities we've lived in as well, and just speaking to different people and just getting curious about the way they see the world, and going back to the personal development space, what I found for myself was very prescriptive in what had to be done. And it's like, that's fantastic. And for example, in the personal development arena, just in a bookstore, you'll have hundreds of titles speaking about all different topics. But sometimes we can innocently think that that's the way to live life. Right. We need to do all these things. But there's our way. We're the expert of our lives. But we can sometimes get caught into the misunderstanding, and innocently as well, that life is to be lived a certain way. And that's where I think a lot of people innocently get caught up, and that's where stresses, overwhelm, anxiety, because I was in that same boat myself. I was getting caught up in the way things had to be, your habits. You get up in the morning, you do this, your affirmations. By the end of the morning, you're exhausted. It's like,
and you're thinking, what did I get done?
Exactly. And then that just, as we know, we're thinking beings. Our brains will naturally think. So, of course, it's not now turning out the way we wanted it to turn out. Then we start beating ourselves over the head with a Zen stick, and that's where this thought storm starts to happen. We start thinking about our thinking, and then from a business standpoint, for example, productivity drops, innovative thinking starts to drop, creativity drops, because you've got so much bandwidth consumed in this overthinking, that type of thing. So yeah, it's been really interesting this last few years. And like I said, that first 6 months of Malta, just speaking to people, connecting with people, meeting them where they're at, and just having natural conversations, because it was amazing. Just I had nothing to actually do. So there was no outcome then attached to anything I was doing, which was really beautiful, because we can so often get caught up, especially when we're in a business, or specifically in a sales position, especially, you're kind of in that mode of always, while you might be inquisitive and curious, you kind of jump into that habit of trying to probe too much, or it can sometimes come across artificial. But it was just something about that slowing downness and just connecting with other people and just getting curious about where they're coming from and how they see the world. And that naturally started to help me get clearer about the kind of direction I wanted to head in, having resigned 6 months earlier. So it's just been a fascinating thing. So it gave me the opportunity to go and try stuff just for the fun of trying stuff without knowing. So it was digital marketing for a while that I went into, which led into e-commerce, which took me into Amazon space around the world, speaking to people and attending different workshops and helping people set up their Amazon retail business and that type of thing. And what kept on, I guess the thing that kept on coming back was, even going back to my corporate career on reflection, was that I was always falling back into a coaching type conversation. And that for me happened effortlessly. And it wasn't until London just before the pandemic hit in March of 2020, that someone actually took me to London, that I met in Atlanta, funnily enough, at an event, and wanted me to help him set up his business. And I had a reflective on day 3 of working together. It's like, I actually much more enjoy being that kind of middle catalyst of someone, instead of trying to do all the other stuff.
Right.
But I've got the awareness, but for me, it's about that slowing down and actually asking the questions of people, so that they go into the business for the right purposes that they actually want to, instead of what they think they need to go into business for. And that the congruency can then naturally unfold throughout life, whether it's in your personal life or relationships or whatever. Right. So yeah, it's just been an amazing discovery over this time. And yeah, we just happen to find ourselves now in Italy, and we might move on soon. We're not sure. We're not really fixed to moving on at any particular time. It's like when we're ready, we're ready. And it brings an element of fun and adventure to it as well.
Right. I love that. And the concept of slowing down, I think, especially here in the States, I mean, people are like, no, must be working 28 hours a day, right? And 2 years ago, we were forced to not slow down, to stop. And obviously it happened worldwide to varying degrees, where everything did just come to a halt. Now, I think we all thought it was kind of humorous here in the States, where they said, oh, it's just going to be 2 weeks. We all went, yeah, right. But I think it was one of those things that was so interesting to watch, because, like we said, so many people were forced to slow down. I mean, the number of people who started posting on Facebook, we took a walk today, right? They didn't have anything else to do and they were going stir crazy, so they took a walk. They no longer had the commutes. And I think that was a big thing, when you no longer had that 10-minute, 15-minute, hour or more each way commute. That was a huge thing. I mean, it's got to be, that was one of those things that I think brought people's blood pressure down. Unfortunately, the stress of home officing and things like that took the blood pressure back up. But, when we had to slow down, and for people who all of a sudden had to teach their kids and do all of those things, yes, it was stressful, but it gave time for people to really think about, is this what I want to do? I mean, the people who are surprised at the Great Resignation, no, I mean, I think that really is one of those things that so many people, it's like you did. They sat down and they went, is this what we want to be doing with our lives? Maybe, maybe not. So how has this, you mentioned, that this kind of, 2 years ago was about the point you started really thinking about this. How have you seen, people change going through this whole process?
Well, if we go back to that kind of March, actually, it was probably May, so a few months into the pandemic. And I'm sure you saw it too. LinkedIn had an event every 2 minutes being posted.
Right.
And because of Italy being in lockdown first, and it being English speaking as well, I had to go straight away to look at, okay, I need to see what's going on in the English speaking market because my tones are conversational. So I started just subscribing to and signing up for a lot of these events because I wanted to hear on the ground what was going on.
Right.
And there was nothing better than real-time stuff, real-time attendance, and just seeing what the chat was doing, what people were bringing up through these different events. And just in that alone, because even in Australia, I was signing up because it worked out really well. Their evening, a lot of events were being held, so it was my morning here. And just seeing that the same kind of themes just start to appear. That same stress you've got, like between work themselves, if they're a business owner or they're working for someone, but then the element of having the family at home while they're trying to work, the dog barking in the background, their partner's there as well. Everything's going to crap so fast. And it's just that again, that heaviness, which causes the stress. Also, they think. And that's where, for me, just seeing that and getting curious based on my understanding of what I've seen for myself since as well, up to that point in time, was I'm just going to go and just, I'm seeing the comments. Let me just reach out to these people and just say, hey, if you need some space just to let, however it shows up from a decompression session, whatever, someone's different perspective on things based on what's going on for you, because I can see your comments. I'm here if you just want an ear. And it was amazing just how many people actually reached out and just to thank you. And I said, I've got nothing here to sell you at all. It's purely, I can see what you're doing. And I have a love for small business owners, especially with what's going on right now, from having to pivot. You've got teams, you've got small teams, the employees that work for you, they're obviously having some form of similar thinking as well. Am I going to have a job tomorrow? What's going on? All this type of stuff. So for me, I wanted to go in and say, okay, let's just look at this. If we can explore the slowing down, because you've obviously got a lot going on. Let's just see what can evolve naturally from this. And from that place, it was really beautiful to actually see, because it was first seeing where they're at, whatever was going on for them. And like, especially in hospitality, where if they got a cafe or restaurant and having to see.
Oh yeah, just mass panic.
Absolutely. And from this outset, I would say you are the expert of your business. You know it better than me. All I'm going to do is create the space for you to have look in a different direction for a bit, then come back and see if you see things differently. As subtle and simple as that, which, when we're caught in these thought storms of stress and anxiety, or whatever, that's not one thing that you're going to think about. Taking some time out, look somewhere else, and then come back, type of thing. So that's what I was really bringing to the forefront. And it was really cool to see that once a light bulb came on for them, and that's where a lot of my coaching, or like I call it clarity facilitation now, is all insights based, because you will have your own insight. And however that shows up for you, whether it's a big one or a small one, it's yours, and you can't unsee what you've seen for yourself. And that's what I really put top of mind for them as well. So as they started to see how their experience around what was going on differently, something really cool started to happen. So they started just that freeing up of bandwidth. They were able to show up to their teams, even if it was remote, to their teams, and kind of impart what they were seeing, because they could see what their teams were going through as well. And it brought more compassion into the conversations as well. And as that started to evolve, and I just call it like a waterfall, it was really cool, because going back to innovation and productivity, if you've got a whole lot going up here, I guarantee your productivity and innovation are going to drop as well.
Right. Yeah, those little wheels are, the little hamsters in your brain are busy.
And that's exactly it. Our brains, as I mentioned before, our brains are thinking machines. They're going to think. We can't stop them from thinking. But we also don't have to believe what they're thinking.
Right.
And that's where there were so many uncertainties. And when we zoom out anyway, you think about life, it's full of uncertainties and unknowns. It's just that at that particular point in time in March 2020, it got slapped in our face so hard, so fast. It's like, whoa, we've never experienced that before. So that for me was a real, almost a validation to say, okay, there's something that I'm sharing here
Mhm.
and something I'm doing from a connection
Mhm.
standpoint that really started to speak to people beyond
Mhm.
even the words I was
Mhm.
speaking. There was that kind of human to human
Right.
connection, and okay, maybe I don't really have to do things the way,
Mhm.
yeah. So then going back to your question about this great resignation and that type of thing and how people have changed things, what I started to see as I did this more and more with different groups, yes, there would be the business owners that would then start to leverage off the clarity that their teams were having around
Mhm.
what they were seeing for themselves and coming together with compassion and bringing in new ideas and innovation, that type of thing naturally.
Mhm.
But also, there were people that were saying, I've hated this business for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
I
Right.
want out. I'm
Mhm.
not in a position that it's going to, if I actually shut it down now,
Mhm.
it's not going to impact. I've got cash reserves. I can
Mhm.
carry it for
Mhm.
a couple of years if I have to, or sell it, or I don't really care. It's
Mhm.
kind of this thing that's made me slow down,
Mhm.
realize how much time I haven't spent with my
Mhm.
family or with my kids,
Mhm.
and that type of thing. So it's been really cool just to see
Mhm.
show up in so many different
Right.
ways,
Mhm.
and pointing back to you are the expert of your life, and we've all got this inner GPS. And as you stated before, it gave us this opportunity to actually just stop. Just like, and I love using nature in metaphors and that type of thing. You look at animals, especially in the wild, when they don't know what to do, they'll just be looking around and then they'll take them in a direction.
Right.
It's like,
Or they're laying down. They're taking it easy. They're not running wildly around for the most part.
and that's what we do. And
Mhm.
it's just a beautiful metaphor and reminder, a gentle reminder that we don't have to be chasing all the time
Right.
just because we think
Mhm.
we need to be chasing.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's just been a really beautiful exploration
Mhm.
for myself, but then also with others.
Mhm.
And then the natural onflow effect has been probably the most impactful for me, because even with family back in Australia
Mhm.
that have been going through a lot of stuff during this time
Mhm.
as well, for me just to not get caught up in the story of
Mhm.
what they're going through, but show up, be
Right.
grounded enough
Mhm.
so they can share, and they can, whatever, if it's crap or good or whatever it may be, I can just be there
Mhm.
and just help them to see something different
Mhm.
that can actually change the direction they're looking
Mhm.
at, and they can move on from that and go, okay, well, I get that now. It was
Mhm.
just something I had to go through to move on without
Right.
having a whole lot on it
Mhm.
that you then attach yourself to it, and you're dragging that on for the
Mhm.
next 2 years because you can't release it or whatever it may be, because everyone's different. But
Mhm.
yeah, so it's just been really enjoyable.
Mhm. Right. And I think one of the interesting things about all of this was to watch, the first several months when, because here in the States at least, you went to work on Friday and you didn't go back into work on Monday. I mean, it was and I remember texting my husband on Thursday saying, "I think there's going to be a problem." And he said, "Well, they haven't really said anything at the office, and then Friday it was you're going to be home for a while." And, he was fortunate in that he had, a laptop that he could bring home. He had all of the resources that, their company was pretty much on the cloud anyway. So it wasn't a huge thing for him to do it, at least from a technology standpoint. Didn't have an office. We had to set that up. But, I think so many people for those first couple months did not like it. There was, and a part of it was the uncertainty. They really didn't know what was going on. The kids were home. You couldn't drive. I mean, all of those various things. You were just told you go home and you stay home. And those people wagged their little fingers at us, and and then to start watching the shift of people going, huh, we like this. We like being home. And to watch the companies that were smart enough to go, okay, we realize you can work from home and get the job done, because that was, of course, the first big thought that so many companies had was, oh my God, nothing's going to get done because everybody's going to be screwing around. Well, I remember I had one person, they told me, they said, I'm really worried. And this was right at the very start of this. They said, I'm worried that my employees will not do the work. I said, do they do the work when you're there, overseeing them and you trust them? Well, ugh. And I said, so trust, that's the big word. You either trusted them to do the work or you didn't. in or out of the office. And I said, and if you didn't trust him in the office, that's the issue. It's not going to work. But when companies realized, hey, this is going to work, we can give our employees flexibility and say, you want to be working at 11 o'clock at night? Fine. As long as you get the work done, we don't care. Or, all of those various things. And then of course, that was when people started going, I really, really like this, but do I really like working for that company? And of course, the Great Resignation started when the company started saying, you're coming back. You're coming back into the office. And people went, oh, hell no. I don't want to do that commute. All of those things, even though we miss those social aspects of being in the office. And there's obviously big benefits from, the conversation that takes place as you're getting coffee, popping into somebody's cubicle and saying, what about? And so, people have had to work through those. But I think so many people realized, you talk about being the expert of you. I think when so many people really did take ownership and say, we can determine where we're gonna go from here. I think that's that has been probably the biggest thing that has happened from a positive standpoint because of COVID.
No, absolutely. And like with anything, we're all our unique expression in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in itself has really blossomed in this 2 years as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, would have jumped at the opportunity straight away to try something different.
Mm-hmm.
And others just need that. I use the metaphor when I'm working with clients a lot with the snow globe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're shaking up that snow globe and think of that as our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the way to make the snow globe clear and see?
It has to just settle.
Exactly. But we're too busy shaking the damn thing more aggressively all the time.
Yep.
And I think that's where the people from the ones that I spoke with anyway, that even point them in the different direction and they're always continually like, no, I want to go back over this way type of thing, were the ones that were so fixed on the way things had to be.
Right.
Instead of just going, okay, now let's put the snow globe down.
Mm-hmm.
It might take a day, it might take a week, it might take a month.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what's going on behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
but be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's no more uncertain than the uncertainty that's already there for you anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And just putting it into perspective like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just, there's a term that was introduced to me, actually, I think it was probably around February of 2020, essential selfishness.
Mm.
You think of it, we always hear the metaphor of on the aircraft where you put your own mask,
you put your mask on before you help someone else. Mm-hmm.
But what if we just decided to put oxygen mask on us even when we don't need it? Like it's like that essential selfishness, just taking time out just for taking time out without being focused on something else. Because I think we get so caught up that we only want to look after ourselves when we're sick or when we feeling we're about to get sick or whatever it may be, that we kind of forget that, hey, this well-beingness, which we've always got accessible to us, except that we sometimes have a whole lot of thinking about it otherwise. What if we actually just did stuff that spoke to us before we even need to worry about, oh, it needs to happen now that I'm getting sick or now that before the relationship's about to break down or whatever. That's why it's a really fun exploration actually around essential selfishness, because it just makes people think, I never actually thought about looking after myself just without having an actual agenda attached to it.
Right.
It's just, and so it's really cool just seeing how that kind of unfolds and what can actually come from that, because it's life. It can really be just so simple, except that we're always looking for complex solutions for everything, whether it be in business or in our personal lives, relationships, whatever. So just pointing back to that, okay, well, am I actually making this more complicated just because I've got a whole lot of thinking about it? And that's again that snow globe, and I use it all the time. And I also use the chattering teeth. It's like we've got a brain that talking all the time. But
well, and I have a visual aid that works with this conversation too, because what we're worried about is, right? You know?
Exactly. And yeah, so it's, you can go so many directions, but yeah, like at the top theme is, like I said before, when we slow down, we start to see more and get quiet and start to hear
Mhm.
what may be. And there's so much wisdom as well that we hold inside of us from a congruency standpoint. And like you're talking about before, connecting that heart and mind and body. And it's not just on a spiritual basis, but it just at a quantum level, even.
Right.
It's things, when things are aligned,
Mhm.
they happen more effortlessly.
Mhm.
And if we want to navigate our lives in business or in our personal life, if we're actually just being ourselves,
Mhm.
there's a lot less thinking involved in it,
Mhm.
and we can actually just get ourselves into flow and just start to navigate a hell of a lot more easier. And
Right.
yeah, we'll not, like, even looking at one of the other metaphors. So back in, I think it was 2018, we were in Bali and there was a massive earthquake. That was my first big earthquake that we'd experienced. And just the panic around everywhere. But that, speaking to this wisdom, like I had no idea what the hell was going to show up when there's a 6.7 earthquake happening, and I'm in a restaurant and I need to get out, and I'm screaming and yelling all the craziness. But we know what to do in the moment, and we're built really, really well for in the moment. But we can think about how things need to be, and then we get caught up in that anxiousness, or we
The
can be
what
reflective
ifs.
on exactly.
Mhm.
But there's so much wisdom in being in that presence of right now, and we'll know when we need to know. So yeah, it's really, and it's just really gentle as well, without having to go, okay, these are your 10 steps you need to do to prepare for if an earthquake needs to, if it might occur. Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole process of overthinking, I mean, maybe one of the other ways to think about it is little kids. They start to walk and they just get up and go. They're not thinking, what if I run into the coffee table? What if I fall down? What they just go. And when the adults around them are doing the that's when they start thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And so, it really is, you mentioned at the very start, it's about pushing all those other thoughts, people away and just saying, this is the way I'm going to do this. It might not be right for you, might not be right for most people, but this is the way I'm going to do this. And I think that really is very hard for people, because we have people who mean well, who are saying I call them the yabbits. They're saying, yeah, but, and they mean well. They want to protect us and all of those things. But, they don't realize that, as you said, in here, in our hearts and in our heads, we know what we should be doing. It's just push that clutter away to pay attention to, this is really what I should be doing.
Well, that brings me to this understanding where our experience is actually coming from. And then also understanding that everyone else is having their own unique personal experience at the same time. And as soon as we really start to see that for ourselves, that's where compassion then comes into the equation as well. It's like you were saying, that there's people that will perfect example, parents, when we're growing up, oh, we want you to be successful and go to university, or whatever the case may be. And it's from their perspective, in their personal experience, from what they've accumulated over the years.
And they do mean well.
Exactly. And they see the world that way. And we're seeing in the world our way. And especially now, there's definitely, like we're pointing to the last 2 years, people have woken up to something beyond the norm. That used to be. And bring that even back into business environments, like managers and their teams. Like every single person is having their own unique personal experience in that moment. And the best thing we can do is meet them where they're at and help
Mhm.
we can actually help them a lot more by
Mhm.
getting an understanding of how they're seeing the world.
Right.
Because, yeah, we have so many misunderstandings about the
Mhm.
way we see the world,
Mhm.
and they can have so many misunderstandings about how they see the
Mhm.
world. And if we just compare notes about what's going on, it's a
Mhm.
lot more amicable,
Right.
and really cool stuff can come
Mhm.
out of that.
Mhm.
And it's a lot more effortlessness.
Mhm.
There's a lot more effortless
Mhm.
in that as well. So yeah, it's that whole, and when you're speaking about the kids again, like my sister's got 5 kids, so I got the opportunity to see
Mhm. Mhm.
the personalities. But when they're babies just do what babies do,
Right.
and
Mhm.
we don't judge them because
Mhm.
they do something. But
Mhm.
it's only when they start to get older
Mhm.
that we start to judge everything. Oh, why
Mhm.
didn't you do your homework? Oh, why
Mhm.
didn't you do this? Oh, why didn't you
Mhm.
perform in this way?
Mhm.
And you can understand how innocently the parents are thinking that's the way things
Mhm.
need to be.
Mhm.
And there is an element, depending on whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
to help educate them to
Mhm.
move forward. But at the same time, kids can be a really good teacher to us
Mhm.
adults.
Right.
That's what I love, just seeing that the innocence in kids.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, and seeing how, they realize what is truly important, and I think that's, that's one of the things. It's funny, one of the things we had a long time ago here in the States, there was a program on called Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Yeah.
And it really, was one of those things where, they would gather all these little kids and they would just start talking to them. And, it's always entertaining because you get the "you're funny looking," those type of, and things like that. But then when you ask them serious things, a lot of times they're like, "Hmm, but do I still get ice cream?" And it really is something where they simplify it. Because it really is, do I get ice cream or not? I mean, that's, um, but, it's and I think that's one of the things. I mean, it comes back to that slowing down. Stop and think, okay, maybe we'll have a couple of the what ifs in there, but let's not have 50 of them. And, and really stopping, okay, well, if we do this, this may happen. Then what? And kind of, you can't just go willy-nilly, but it's getting rid of, as we said, all those other voices and things like that, and really focusing on what's important to you, and obviously the people immediately around you. I'm sure, if things might have been a little bit different if you had gone home and told your wife, you need to do this, and she went, "Oh, hell no." Yeah, things would have been, probably you would have had some different discussions. But at the same, and then that comes back to, okay, is that the right person to be with? I mean, all of those things. But, it's, and then you get caught up in all that, right? So there goes those thoughts. Then, those little hamsters just took off like crazy again. So, how do we just push those thoughts away? I mean, how do we stop? How do we pause? How do we really just center ourselves?
There's a thing that there's a word that or a phrase that I use about going further upstream in our
Hmm.
psychology. Understanding that points to experience again, and that we have a brain, and our brain will think, and it will always think. If we just play with even just that little bit there, like there's life is coming through us, right? There's even at a quantum level, regardless of whether someone's spiritual or not, or religious or not, at a scientific level, there's energy. And there's stuff passing through us all the time. It's like looking at a tree. Like the tree will just grow because there's a life force coming through it, and we're no different. So stuff just passes, will come through us. We'll have a thought. We'll have thinking about the thought. And then we can then have a hell of a lot more thinking about that thought. And that's where we get caught up in stuff. So just noticing, like having, and this is what it took me a while to get this, because I was like, okay, well, all right, this try again, logical mind trying to formulate everything and that type of thing. And it took me a while to actually sit with it. And then I started to really see for myself, yeah, okay, now there is actually truth to that. that I've got a brain, and there's something, it's like, okay, it's a perfect example. Life force. So you've got the projector, the movie projector.
Mm-hmm.
The movie projector needs to be plugged into a power source.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie gets projected on the screen. We're very similar to that movie projector.
Mm.
We're plugged into source.
Mm-hmm.
Our experience is created up here
Mm-hmm.
and projected out there. But we think that is coming in from outside in, but we're actually projecting what's coming in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And even that's a massive misunderstanding. And that's where a lot of people actually get around the stress, especially in workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my boss is stressing me out.
Mm-hmm.
My workload is stressing me out. Is that actually true? Can we explore that a bit?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I've seen, I used to look at it that way too. But now for me, is it that email that's just a whole lot of pixels on a screen making
Mm-hmm.
you feel a certain way? Or is it you're thinking
Right.
about that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big distinction there.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you start to notice it, you'll notice a hell of a lot more too.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to see, and that's where not necessarily changing your thinking,
Mm-hmm.
it's just noticing, oh, my brain's just doing what a brain does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it is. And
Right.
you can kind of let it go because, okay, well, my brain's going off in a tangent, and it's okay, even if you're in a bad mood.
Mm-hmm.
We need experience. Remember the old Trinitron televisions,
Mm-hmm.
the three color? You needed to adjust the three colors to get
Mm-hmm.
a good picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our experience requires the ups and downs, because if it was just flatline,
Mm-hmm.
we'd be dead.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
Or at least bored to death. Mm-hmm.
But they're all flicked to one side, everything's black. If you flick it all to the other side, everything's white.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that contrast to experience.
Right.
So we need the ups and downs, and understand that for us to experience life, we need a whole perspective of everything.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, we can get so caught up because of what the media says that we have to be positive about everything, and we can't be sad about things or angry about stuff. Like
or you must be angry about this. You have to be angry about this. Mm-hmm.
It's like you feel whatever you feel, and know that we're only ever feeling our thinking in the moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just noticing more and more of this. And this is where, when I work with people, is creating that space to explore this really subtly with no judgment, and just say, you can imagine how life could be so much easier that when you do hit the wall, and we're all going to hit the wall anyway until we're dead, it won't have as much impact on you, because you just realize that, hey, okay, maybe it's not the best time for me to go and press send on that email because I'm in a really crappy mood at the moment.
Yeah, let's pause.
Exactly. So all those little things, and I think that to keep it as simple as possible, just consider the possibility that our brains are always thinking, and it's as simple as that, and we don't have to be caught up in whatever is going on for us. And at any time, we're just one thought away from a whole new experience. And it's as simple as that.
Right.
So
Yeah. It's interesting. I have people who say, you need to, and, talk about, paying attention to what other people tell you to do. You have to meditate. You have to clear your mind. I'm like, no, you don't understand my brain. It does not shut down. And I've had people say, there are things wrong with you, and meditating would help. And I know that meditating is not going to work for me, at least their definition of meditating, because it is, and I just, I sit there and I think, how do you turn your brain off? Well, of course you're not. It's about focusing on maybe music, maybe, something that maybe calms your brain for the little bit, but your brain does not turn off. But I always like it when people, well, you have to do, no, I don't. Or you have to journal. I really like the people who tell me you have to journal. I'm like, no, I don't. Not going to accomplish anything by doing that. So why am I going to do it?
Well, I'm very much in that same boat. And as I've explored different modalities over the years, it always came, you need to do this, you need to do that. And where I mentioned before, where we are our unique expression of this energy force that creates everything out there in the quantum field. And just on the meditation side of things, it wasn't until my coach back in the day actually said, there's the practice of meditation and there's being in a meditative state.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they're two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, and this is getting quiet again and listening to okay, I need time out to recalibrate or whatever it may be. For me, understanding that as someone who's auditory as well, listening to something does my head in. Right. To try and relax. Mm-hmm. But I can go out, I can sit in the park, just listen to the trees rustle, the leaves rustle, whatever, barefoot on the grass, just take some time out. That will ground me and I will come back so refreshed from being in a meditative state of just observing whatever's going on and not being attached to what's going on. So yeah, I love that you see that same thing too, because do what works for you. Like tools, tactics, strategies, all that type of stuff are really, really useful until they're not.
Right. Well, I keep thinking about diets. People are like, oh, well, you must do the this a name diet, or you must do a this a name diet. And, it's like, but each physical body is different. And so if, say you're doing one of the keto diet, which is it the one that you eat lots or less protein, whatever. But if that's not what your body needs, you're going to mess things up. And I remember, when I was going through chemotherapy, one of the things people said is, oh, you must do this and this and this. And several of those this and this and this has actually made me sicker. Some of them did absolutely nothing. And I would tell people, it's really weird. I craved, one of the things, I craved Coca-Cola, not Pepsi, not other soda. Now I like Coke better than any of those, but I craved those. And, which is probably not good in a variety of ways. I didn't need the caffeine. I didn't need the sugar, all of those. But one very smart person, and I don't even remember who this very smart person was, said, there's something in there your body says it needs. Follow that craving. And I went, okie dokie. And I had one. I mean, this was not, let's have, 6, 12, it was, okay, I had one and then it was done. And I think it's the same way with your brain. Your brain knows what it wants. And when we force it to do the other things, that is where we're actually damaging things.
Well, and this kind of leads into the introvert side of things. It's starting to surface
yes, because
more
you
and more.
focus on working with introverts.
But I didn't initially. And that's where you can just listening and feel, because I am an introvert myself from my personality test profile. Now, there are so many misunderstandings around it being what an introvert is. And even, so when I first start working, or even before I start working with people, and I just want to get to know them first, I want to understand what they see as an introvert as well. And especially the ones, and I just use the word introvert very lightly as well, but along with highly sensitives and empaths. With so many, because of the society that we've created, there's a lot of, from an energy draining element that comes into that kind of the introvert, highly sensitive and empath, especially when talking about grinding away and that type of thing. And talking to what you're saying about listening to your body, there's a massive energy element within the introvert spectrum to listen to your body. Like if you need to recharge, and that means you go lie down for half an hour.
Right.
When you're feeling tired, do it. Because the worst, and this happened to me as well, this grinding and thinking, okay, what's going on with me? My productivity is actually dropping. I'm working I'm working more hours, but my productivity is dropping. Again, it's that wisdom that I'm pointing to again. Like, listen to your bodies. They are so intelligent. You think about all the thousands of systems that are working without us even thinking about it all the time. But when we're in tune with ourselves enough, we can actually go for years without even falling ill.
Right.
And it's so simple, but we just get so caught up in, again, having to do the next thing, whether diets or regimes or whatever. That's what I invite anyone. Just be okay with that wisdom that our bodies actually have and be okay taking its advice, because you might actually find it's actually better advice than anything else anyone else is going to give you.
Right. And you mentioned the definition of introvert, and it's funny. There's a commercial running here in the United States right now for an insurance company. It's the one that advertises with the little gecko guy.
Yeah.
And he's talking to this woman, and she's had an accident, and she's saying, that she was glad to be able to do everything online because she took one of those online tests, and she's an introvert. And he said, "Oh, I am too." And she said, "Oh no, it's very rare." And he kind of goes, "Nyeh." But I think that's the what they're pointing out is online tests, I mean, all of those things. And it really comes back to your own definition. I tell people I'm an extrovert. It's pretty obvious. I'm, pretty out there, pretty social. But there are times where I'm like going to hide today, not, and so it's knowing, again, it's knowing what your body wants. Sometimes my brain says, we're just going to watch I Love Lucy today, and all of those things, but I mentioned that you work with introverts a lot. How has the things like COVID, where we're forced to not be meeting. Now we are getting back out there and things like that. I had somebody tell me, "Oh, this must be great for introverts." And a person who I know who defines herself as an introvert said, She said, "I need out there too." And so how have you found that with people?
This is where it's interesting, because even from industry to industry, the changes within that. So, for example, in the IT industry, with IT engineers, programmers, that type of thing, very logical minded, but also have challenges around relationships from the ones that vast majority have come, and it starts to surface that the challenges around relationships, not just with themselves, but also going out meeting people and stuff like that, because you need to be confident. You need to do this. And it's like, I'm an introvert. I'm not confident enough to go out.
I'm going to talk to my shoes.
Exactly. It's stuff like that. And if we just use that example in itself, just having them share with me what they think around the introvert and why they think there's a link between confidence and not being able to go out and speak to people and that type of thing. It's really interesting, because it even just opens up them to think a bit more beyond what they've just been believing from external. And one of the things that was a massive breakthrough with one of the people I worked with was around exactly that, the relationships, wanting to find someone but not being confident, that type of thing. But the confidence thing kept on surfacing, and the shyness kept on surfacing. And we started to explore that a bit more. And it's like, do you really think you're a shy person? Oh yeah, I could. I said, so what do you think about public speaking? Oh, the whole public speaking, I can't get up on stage or in front of a camera and speak to people and stuff like that. And then we started going in and to the type of work he actually does. And I know nothing about computer programming, but this guy knew a hell of a lot about it. And we started to reflect just on that itself. And there was something that, again, the insight, some light bulb started to go off as we started to explore it more and more. And he started to see that he's really confident in speaking about what stuff he knows. And he could speak to people for hours. And we actually ended up setting up a time for him to actually do a presentation on Zoom. And I think about 30 people or something on the call. And he blitzed it. And what was really cool about it was just what he saw from that himself, just a misunderstanding about what he thought, even before he started, like,
and what people had told him.
Exactly. And just knowing that, hey, if you're a seasoned professional public speaker or it's your first time, you're going to be nervous before you do anything anyway. But as soon as you get into that first minute or so and you fall into what you know about, it becomes effortless. You just you fall into that mode. And that's the same with the conversation. You're going to go up to someone, if he wants to meet a woman, it finds attractive, go up, say hi.
Mhm.
Like it's your thinking about
Mhm.
that thing that
Mhm.
causes the stress, the anxiety, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And nothing's personal on
Mhm.
the flip side of
Right.
it. So
Yeah,
if they say
if she blows him
get
off,
lost,
okay, go to the next person. Right. Mhm.
and that's where that's where these fundamental principles of understanding where experience comes from.
Mhm.
Everyone's only having their own personal experience.
Mhm.
When you really start to see that more and more for yourself, and I'm still seeing it like years on, I'm still seeing more and more, like I'm getting more grounded into that understanding itself. You really start to care less about what people say or do.
Right.
And it's like, but you'll still get impacted from time to time
Mhm. Mhm.
but then you go, okay, no, that's just me thinking
Right.
about what the
And that's their problem.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so many things can be just alleviated.
Mhm.
And think it from a stress standpoint as well.
Mhm.
The amount of thinking, like our bodies, with all these congruent systems that are running all the time, that extra stress and everything
Mhm.
from an immune system, how
Mhm.
much our immunity gets depleted as
Right.
soon as we've got so much of our
Mhm.
bandwidth chewed up
Mhm.
in all these scenarios that
Mhm.
we are making up,
Right. Right.
that we just go, okay, well, my brain's just doing what a brain
Mhm.
does.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I can let it go and
Mhm.
move on. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that introvert thing, it's been really interesting. As soon as people start to see that, it was the two biggest things were shyness and confidence
Mhm.
that I saw surface.
Right.
And as soon as they start to see that differently,
Mhm.
things started to change dramatically.
I love it. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Anthony, we just scratched the surface on this. This is why I set a timer because we could be going for hours on this. And all that means is we just have to have you back because this is such a great discussion. So tell me and tell everyone who is watching or listening the services that you provide and how people reach out and work with you.
Okay, so from a contact standpoint,
Hmm.
I'm very unorthodox around even that. So I've taken myself pretty much of all social media, bar
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Now, and that's probably my preferred way of people contacting me directly.
Okay.
Now, my invitation to people generally
Hmm.
is just reach out to me first.
Hmm.
Let's start a conversation. Again, I never have anything to sell to you because I don't even know you.
Hmm.
And if we hit something off and it goes beyond that, cool.
Hmm.
And that's the way I like to do business now because
Hmm.
it's that. For me, it's about connection.
Right.
If you want to work with me, if something
Hmm.
resonates with you,
Hmm.
and I resonate with if I believe that I can actually help you instead
Hmm.
of just going, okay, I'm going for the sale.
Hmm.
That's how I want to operate
Okay.
because I believe that's how we can both impact each other's
Hmm.
lives and those around us as well. So LinkedIn, definitely from a contact standpoint.
Okay.
Um, as far as the services I offer, I keep things really simple even on that. And my booking page is actually offered once I actually confirm with the other person
Okay.
that we actually could look at
Hmm.
working together.
Hmm.
And for that, I usually just offer like a standard kind of package that people
Hmm.
from a coaching type
Hmm.
package together, or there's definitely like we can customize something
Hmm.
as well, which I've found is definitely the most attractive to a lot of people because I understand that everyone's different. Some
Hmm.
just want access to me on Telegram to
Hmm.
send questions when they're stuck. Some
Hmm.
like to have an intensive. Some
Ah. Hmm.
I'm even looking now. If you want to come to Tuscany for a 2-day, we spend time together
Hmm.
here, where it's like half day and half day chill
Hmm.
type of thing, and just let
And
reflection and
oh,
but
you
in
can
different
chill in
environment.
Tuscany. Hmm. Hmm.
So I want to make things as an experience
Hmm.
because I think over this last 2 years, so many of us have missed out on certain experience that we would
Hmm.
normally love to have, and
Hmm.
so yeah, to take you out of where you're used to being in this
Hmm.
last 2 years, take it out of there and just experience something different, but from a place of seeing things differently as
Hmm.
well, not just the environment. So
Right.
it's very, very moldable and
Hmm.
customizable to
Hmm.
whoever I'm in connection with.
I love it. I love it. This has been absolutely fascinating and I can't wait to chat again because I think you've got such great insight. And again, if we're not right in our hearts and our heads, it's not going to matter what we do with our business. And so, and obviously it's not just business. It's every part of your life. And I think that's one of the things that, we have learned is when we were forced. And it was funny. We had to be forced. And sometimes it's illness, sometimes it's a death, all sorts of other things. But when we're forced to stop and pause, it's not always a bad thing. In fact, most of the time it's a good thing. And so I think that's been one of the things that we have definitely learned the last couple of years. It's like I said, it's great. It's been fascinating talking with you. Do you have any final thoughts, Anthony, that you want to leave everyone with?
I would say that just remember that you are really the only expert of you, and just consider the possibilities of just trusting in yourself and seeing where that goes and being okay with not knowing all the time, because just exploring that and just considering it for yourself, I think it's a beautiful place to actually start seeing everything a whole lot more different as well.
Mhm. I love it. Well, I cannot wait to talk with you again. I'm Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely delightful and fascinating discussion with Anthony Donataccio. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.